Robin
Yeah.
DiAngelo is a person who it's hard not to want to punch your screen after listening to her for just a few minutes. She goes around, sells her presentations to universities and corporations, basically to tell white people how bad they are. If you think I'm oversimplifying it, I'm really not. At any rate, she's been telling people all the time that white people take advantage of people of color. And then we find out that she plagiarized her dissertation by ripping off people of color.
DiAngelo is an infamous anti-racism scholar and the author of the book White Fragility. As a white woman, she is outspoken about her belief in crediting minorities, but now she's been accused of plagiarism. In an accountability statement posted on her website, DiAngelo says, quote, "Fellow white people must always cite and give credit to the work of BIPOC people who have informed your thinking." But according to a complaint filed last week at the University of Washington, where she received her PhD in multicultural education, she plagiarized many scholars, including 2 minorities. Now, according to the Washington Free Beacon, DiAngelo's doctoral thesis, Whiteness in Racial Dialogue, a Discourse Analysis, that sounds like riveting reading, it takes 2 paragraphs from Asian American professor Thomas Nakayama without correct attribution. She does not include quotation marks or in-text citations. The Free Beacon also reports that she took material from Asian American professor Stacy Lee, summarizing the work of scholar David Theo Goldberg. Joining us now to discuss is Aaron Sabarium, a writer at the Washington Free Beacon, who broke this story, got a lot of attention on social media. Thanks so much for joining us.
By the way, I'm going to read a little bit later the abstract to her dissertation and the opening quotation. It's pretty bad. I do like The Hill. This is a very progressive site. I'm not terribly fond of the lady on the left, but this typically has always been a pretty good site because they have 2 feet on the ground. Again, though, the lady on the left, I'm not a big fan of.
They do both sides. You know, The Hill does both sides, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I think our viewers understand the importance, the influence of Robin DiAngelo. You know, this is a figure who has gotten actually a lot of mockery from kind of all sides of the political spectrum, I would say, in recent years for her kind of racial obsession. The white people should be trying to like exorcise the demon that is racism from their bodies in almost like a quasi-religious way. But now it turns out, you know, give us the scope of how bad it is that some of her writing on this topic was actually plagiarized from minority scholars, the very thing that she says is like a cardinal sin.
Yeah, so there have obviously been a lot of plagiarism allegations in the past year, many of them against DEI officials. And her plagiarism falls, I would say, on the more severe half of the continuum. It's not the worst that I've seen, but it's pretty bad. It's more extensive. Certainly the passages are longer than I think any of the passages at issue in, say, Claudine Gay's work. In some cases, she borrows 2-3 paragraphs in a row from other scholars without any kind of in-text attribution.
By the way, we should mention Claudine Gay is the president of Harvard, or was the president of Harvard, who got nailed for plagiarism. I thought her plagiarism was rather moderate. I didn't really, in my opinion, didn't see anything that was that severe, but clearly not okay. But he's saying that DiAngelo, her plagiarism was much worse.
I've read his article, and they're side-by-side comparison, and it is really bad. Yeah. Like
I saw
anybody would get fired for that.
Most of the people are cited in her bibliography, but that's not really a defense to plagiarism. You have to actually make clear which words are your own and which words are your sources. And she manifestly fails to do that on dozens of occasions throughout this dissertation.
So one success is that she's done what many doctoral scholars don't do, and that's have people read her thesis and her work. Can you tell us how you came to this story, Aaron?
Basically, what is your motive for doing this?
Yeah.
I mean, you might be one of those right wingers just trying to tear her down. Is that what that
Which
is all about?
frankly, I think exactly that's what's happening. Of course, they are targeting these, what they call DEI officials or whatever. Of course they are. Everybody knows that's what's happening, but it doesn't really matter because it's either plagiarized or it isn't.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very good defense against that. Don't plagiarize.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you're a conservative scholar, you're fair game too.
And that's the thing. I mean, what's his name? Chris Bernay on on his Carl Stack blog. He's he's said before, like, yeah, send me the fake and plagiarized doctoral theses of conservative scholars. I'll publish them, right? If you have a complaint that this guy has an agenda, well, you're free to examine every conservative scholar's theses, right? They're out there. There's nothing stopping anybody from that.
There was a complaint. I obtained it, and then I looked at the examples, verified them myself. And look, I've obviously, the Free Beacon has been interested in DiAngelo for a while. All the way back in 2020, we did a lot of reporting on how she made her money, the lack of evidence for the kinds of training she does. One of my favorite stories that my former colleague Charles Lehman wrote was about how she actually was paid more than a Black woman for speaking at an anti-racist diversity training. She made almost twice as much as the Black speaker for just basically showing up and lecturing the audience about their racism. So, I think that the charlatanism has been a focus of ours for a while. And this was kind of just sort of the proverbial chef's kiss, as it were, in reporting against DiAngelo.
Yeah, this is, I just looked up the last time I wrote about Robin DiAngelo for Reason was in this training video of hers that surfaced in which she refers to the famous painting, The Creation of Adam, one of those famous works of Renaissance art as epitomizing white supremacy. And she actually mistakes Adam for David, the biblical figure David, who, as you point, has made a lot of money, is like the leader, maybe in the top 3 names in this field of anti-racism seminars and talks, which she's just paid insane amounts of money to give presentations in educational settings, in some corporate settings. What she charges by the minute is astronomical because she portrays herself as this expert on this topic. So it really does. It's not just a gotcha to say that, she misattributed her sources or didn't do that correctly or, didn't put it. Maybe that can sound trivial to people, but like you have to, journalists, scholars, everyone were expected to, if you're directly quoting someone, you put it in quotes and you say who it's from. You have to paraphrase. You have to be careful if you're just, taking large chunks of text from somewhere else and making sure it's done appropriately. And the previous president of Harvard University, who resigned after, Claudine Gay, after a lot of her mistakes were pointed out, I think that was absolutely fair. And this is, as you say, this is somewhat even more extensive, someone who is even more predominantly in a kind of education and scholarship role. It's, it speaks to the intellectual bankruptcy of what she's doing.
Well, beyond that, I think it shows a lot about her attitude towards scholarship. My dissertation was something I was very proud of, and I poured a lot of effort into it because it was exemplary of what I had been working on for the past, 8 years.
I think she's proud of this as well, just proud of having aggregated all this information in one place, which is slightly different from what you're supposed to do. But
you want to look back on your dissertation as something that is genuine. And it seems to me that she basically got her PhD for the sake of getting one. And I see that a lot with Rashad, for example, when I read his, his dissertation from Clark Atlanta. And Jill Biden, same thing. You see this effort to just try to get something pushed out so that you can get that PhD, so you can call yourself doctor. There's just no pride in one's self-work.
Yeah, and I would emphasize too that the PhD credential is really central to her marketing, right? Her website is literally titled Robin DiAngelo, PhD. And it repeatedly references her academic credentials. It says that the term white fragility was coined by DiAngelo in a 2011 academic paper. In fact, it was actually coined in her dissertation, right? So her entire career basically flows from this dissertation, even though it's obviously not as well known as her best-selling books. So the complaint is, in essence, calling into question the legitimacy of the credential on which she has built her career and through which she has made millions of dollars.
I myself, I'm a victim of the American graduate school industrial complex. Everyone who's had a life free of academic writing or reading, congratulations. But if you look at this and the comparisons that you provide on the Free Beacon are quite good, because you highlight the words in red that are used by these minority scholars and then the words used by DiAngelo. It's a lot of words. It's not just that she read these authors' work and provided a summary. It's a copy paste, change a few words situation. And so as someone who's been an advocate, DiAngelo, saying if you use ideas from BIPOC scholars, cite them. And there were citations, but there is something egregious about this copy paste, change a few words approach that Robin DiAngelo seemingly took. Can you just speak to how egregious this was? I'm sure you had other examples that you didn't include in the article to keep it brief, because the few that are in there are just really shocking. How many exact phrases are the same?
By the way, if you can get the girl on the left, and I think her name is Beverly something, I forget her name, but if you can get her to trash your dissertation and you're a leftist, you've really done something wrong.
Okay, I don't know her, yeah.
Yeah, she's the hard left progressive on the show. She was on my last video that I did. I can't remember the topic, but totally unreasonable, way out there. So if Beverly DAngelo got her to say this is a bunch of crock,
well,
she's really done something.
At the core of it, it's not at all a partisan issue. Either you've plagiarized or you haven't, and there's some in between there as well. But that's to be analyzed. That really has nothing to do with a partisan issue. So I think she's
keep in mind, though,
taking a reasonable stance here.
But if there would have only been mild plagiarism, she would have been defending DiAngelo, saying, oh, yeah, these are mild deals. They're blown out of proportion. People do this all the time. I think that she probably forgot to cite her sources. She's coming out and saying, wow, this is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But is there more?
There is more, and you can you can read the complaint. The full complaint has more. I would say the ones in the article are probably the worst. But yeah, it doesn't end with the ones in the article. In some cases, she'll do this thing where she will credit the people in text, but she won't put quotation marks around the words. So she makes it seem like she's paraphrasing when in fact she's really copying the language verbatim. The other thing you'll notice about the examples we did highlight is that she often just changes one or two words. And that actually makes it worse than if she had simply copied verbatim, because if you copy it verbatim with no alterations, it might just be that you forgot to put the citation or the quotation marks. You were rushing, copy and pasting. It's plausible. When you change a couple words, though, that shows mens rea. That shows that you knew what you were doing and were actively trying to disguise it by making just a few token alterations.
That's a good point.
So that actually, I think, makes it far worse than if she had just literally copied and pasted verbatim. And the other thing you notice is that in some of the passages, she is basically just using summaries that another author used of another author. So it makes it look like she's summarizing, the primary source directly, but what she's actually doing is copying from an unacknowledged secondary source. So it looks like she's citing her work, but she's actually not, which is kind of devious. And it also presents almost a discrete kind of academic dishonesty, because what she's in essence doing is she's basically putting one scholar's words in the mouth of another without saying that that's what she's doing, right? She's making it seem like she's summarizing an author when she's actually relying on a third author's gloss of the original.
I mean, they have a very strong case against her, and I think her response. Do you know her response to this?
No.
Okay, yeah. Well, I don't know, but I mean,
yeah, I haven't seen it.
know,
I'm not sure she has.
It's going to be very difficult to wiggle yourself out of this.
Well, I don't know though. I mean, the guy in the middle looks kind of white. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this plagiarism thing, this scholarly citation thing sounds like a white supremacist thing.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be the argument, is, they're right wing, so they're just trying to discredit a left wing ideology based on facts. That's right. Oh well,
And who invented this whole thing about citing sources? Probably some white dude.
Oh yeah, they go with that. I don't know. Anyway, but I mean, it's kind of funny. She'll have any excuse, really, whatever seems to fly. But
it'll be fun to see it. It'll be fun to see.
She got caught red-handed, really, and I think the important part about this story really is that she actively advocated for citing sources from scholars that were people of color, as they call them, and then did the same thing. The hypocrisy of it. That's what's really at issue here, right? Of course, she plagiarized as well, but the hypocrisy of it makes it an even bigger story.
So all of that speaks to what is at best a pattern of real sloppiness, and at worst, I think, a pattern of kind of serial deception throughout her dissertation.
So that pretty well covers that. Robin DiAngelo, total fraud. No surprise, really. Anything you want to say?
Well, I don't know her as much as I've only come to know about her through this story, and it looks bad. I don't know. She seems like she was one of the earlier ideologists, right? For that's dividing the country, essentially.
Well, she's the one that fired up Evergreen State College in Washington. Are you familiar with that story?
Not at all. What did you explain?
My, that's the one where they basically kidnapped the president, and it is. Now it's a little bit old. It goes back a few years. I should do another show on it. But the students basically took over the college in the name of wokeness. Essentially kidnapped the president. They barricaded him in an amphitheater.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't let him go to use the restroom or nothing. They were actually stopping cars on the road out of the university to look for a professor that they wanted because he was not on board with their wokeness ideologies.
Oh, that's nuts. What year was that?
It must have been 2010s.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Yeah. I'm unaware.
Evergreen State College is the wildest college story I've ever seen. I would have done something on it, but it's been a while since that happened. My buddy Neil V Radio has actually interviewed the professor that they were looking for in those checkpoints. And he was a liberal. He's a progressive, but he voiced a complaint that they didn't like, and they went right after him, to the point they had the college so scared that the president told the police chief of the campus to stand down. And so no police went out to stop the checkpoints. Oh, it's crazy. So, I mean, if this interest, by the way, if this interests you, I am more than happy to go back and do the Evergreen State saga.
It looks like it's a 2017 thing.
Oh, is that 2017?
Well, that's
not that far ago.
Yeah, that's not long. Anyway, that's what I'm seeing here, but I haven't looked into it. Well, I'm glad I'm not in college anymore, I guess.
Oh my gosh! But at any rate, Robin DiAngelo spoke at that university, and I think I kind of blame her for stirring up a lot of this.
Oh, okay, I see. Oh, that's how it's related. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is interesting stuff.